This is comfortable for me.
All right, we're here with David Havasi, if I pronounced that right.
That's correct.
He's got a fascinating history at Tesla. I'll have him introduce himself here in a moment. We happened to meet at this charge point charging station recently at Whole Foods, where we both like to plug in and work. I think it's a nice place to plug in and work, and while you slow charge, and
Brings people together.
yeah, and I charged here for like a year with a BMW i3. I met a BMW guy, met a few people, but it's funny. As soon as I have a Tesla, I start meeting other people.
Tesla time. That's what we call it.
It's a little different. But it was like, oh hey. And you recognized me from writing on CleanTechnica, and we just got going, and I was like, whoa, jackpot! This guy is a treasure of information. So give a little more information about your history, and then we'll.
My name is David Havasi. It's one of those kooky Hungarian names, and my name is David Havasi. I was born and raised in Detroit, the Detroit area in Michigan. My father was an executive with the Big Three for about 38 years, so I kind of grew up in the front seat of vehicle development around the 80s, 90s, and saw a lot of car and driver, car of the year. My dad was on the minivan team, K-Car. These are cars that kind of revolutionized Viper team, although it wasn't car of the year. The Neon, the PT Cruiser, all these cars were kind of ahead of their time, and so it was really exciting to see the minivan invented a genre, didn't exist before. PT Cruiser was the crossover before there was a crossover, and my dad would tell me these ideas years before they come out, and I'd be like, Dad, you're crazy. No one's gonna buy a small van. And it turns out they like it. It was the first non-car to win Motor Trend Car of the Year, which was really amazing. And then PT Cruiser in the mid '90s, my dad's like, there's this car, they called it was called Project Tall Car, and he's like, it's gonna be awesome. It's a crossover. It's on a vehicle platform, but it's like a truck. They didn't have SUV back then. Like it's a truck, and that they didn't have SUV term. And I was like, who's gonna buy it? It's like, it's everyone. It collects all the boxes, and then it was Automobile Magazine Car of the Year, all this stuff. And so it's really cool to see that. So I have a passion for cars. I always have. I learned how to drive in a Dodge Stealth RT. There's a Viper RT10, these lab cars that my dad would bring home. Amazing kind of American muscle. And but I also fancy myself an environmentalist. I've been for quite some time, and definitely there needs to be a reconciliation between those two things, because usually, the greater
becomes a bit of a cognitive dissonance issue, a bit of a struggle internally. It's like loving cars, but being an environmentalist is quite a challenge.
Correct.
At some stage, or it was.
It tears you. Yeah, it does. It like usually the more fun a car is to drive, the more terrible it is for the environment. Or that's what it used to be. And I needed to reconcile that. It was always this inner struggle. Because it's just through passions of mine. And so I lived in New York City. I moved to New York City to go to college. I lived there for about 15 years. I actually didn't have a car for 15 years in my adult life.
Yeah, that's a good way to get out of the problem.
Yeah, exactly. I would say I had an electric car for 15 years. The New York City subway. Yeah, exactly. Totally. So instant torque and everything. Autopilot, cargo, autopilot. All the things way ahead of its time. Yeah. So cheap to maintain, and I discovered, as far as my journey with Tesla, it started way back. So it started like 2003, the AC propulsion days.
2003. Not many people you find. I don't consider myself an early days guy, but obviously earlier than a lot of the market, since I was getting into them before the Model S came out. But there's a lot of guys from the Roadster days who really further back than Model S. But it's sort of rare to find someone from the 2003 days. That's that's wild.
Yeah, so I saw, there's first that concept that came out, the T0, and which kind of, it was the the predecessor to would kind of be the Roadster, the inspiration for the Roadster, as you know.
Yeah, Elon sort of wanted the guy to try to mass produce it, and he was like, well, no, we're not going to do. And so finally, well, so we're going to do it. So he's like, sure, go
exactly
for
right.
it.
Yeah, and that was my exact same view. I was like, this is great. They should build 1 million of these. This would be perfect. Yeah. This answers the question. This bridges the gap. And it was really the advent of the lithium-ion cell that really made it possible, because you had the lead acid and all, and you know, nickel metal hydride, these other chemistries that had compromises.
Yeah, they just weren't quite there. They weren't quite up for the job.
Correct. Yeah. And so now, you know, with the advent of the 18650 cylindrical cell, you know, kind of the workhorse of all electrical devices now, or most mobile devices, it's like, hey, if you string thousands of these together, you can make a really great car of it, and power it. So I thought that was really interesting, and I was like, well, I'm gonna. And then Tesla was formed, and they're like, they're kind of in, you know, stealth. You know, didn't know about it for a couple of years. I didn't associate Tesla with AC propulsion, because they weren't really they weren't really talking about it. But then when the Roadster, they started talking about the Roadster and taking orders for it, the Tesla Roadster, back in you know, like the turn of the century.
Yeah.
You know,
did you see it in a car magazine or something? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, cool. Somebody's actually doing this. Like, cool. I hope it works. I hope it works. This will be cool, because maybe it'll stimulate the market to everything, like the point of what they're doing that. I was thinking that same thing. It'll be this catalyst for change. They'll see it can work and all these things. And then they come out with that. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're building it. Amazing. You know, finally, this is going to be great. And that's when I really got interested in Tesla, because they were building a real product. And so, I was this is a funny thing. I was actually a pretty successful Broadway performer in New York. That was the thing I did before Tesla. Totally random. So I don't know if I mentioned that.
I can totally see. My sister was in theater and then went to LA to try to make it. Ended up making it in interior design, but you know, quite good there. But you know, I can see that you definitely have that speaking, the smiling, the speaking. You're fully, but it's a big benefit. I mean, it's funny that people sort of put this in a niche like career realm, but actually, like, those skills are hugely beneficial in a lot of jobs, you know. Like.
Yeah, and that actually comes up a little later.
Okay.
In the saga of how that intertwines, because that actually became part of my journey with joining Tesla as an employee, and so I was.
You're also good for the video in that regard.
Yeah. What? Really?
And now I see why you were so like checking, you know, am I okay? Oh, I'm not ready for it. I was like, oh, you're fine.
Yeah,
like,
so I'm sensitive to it. Like, I don't totally look like death. Like maybe brought back from the dead. But
we do authentic here. We don't do, you know, fancy schmancy.
It's raw.
Yeah,
wow.
no, it's totally
so real.
It's totally like a strategic choice. It's not about budget or anything like that.
That's great. And they're like, wow, that guy looks terrible. This is going to be good.
We don't have good lighting or makeup artists for, you know, just
That's
for
right. It is real. It's in the field.
Yeah, exactly.
I like
Keep it raw.
Yeah, I like that. So, I was in San Francisco, and I was visiting my my wife. She's also an international vocalist. She travel all around and sing and things. And she's in San Francisco for a few weeks, and I was out there visiting. And it's when the Deepwater Horizon, the oil rig in the Gulf, blew up, and then it was this huge ecological disaster, loss of life. The crew members died on it. It was really the BP oil rig, if you recall.
Yeah, we covered it. It was a good timestamp, because it was one of the big stories of the year. You know.
Yeah.
We covered it quite obsessively when it was. Even for years, we created a small blog that was supposed to be like the ongoing effects of it, you know, because it would never really be gone or over. But that didn't work too well. It was called Failed Drill. Sort of. The name set itself up for failure. Failed Drill.
Well, and that was really the straw that broke the camel's back, where I said I can't sit on the sidelines, and because I always support Tesla. I always thought I'd support Tesla back in the early days, but I always thought I'd support them just as a customer. I was like, oh, I'll buy, if they build something, I will buy it. I am behind this. I want to be a part of this, and I will buy whatever they sell. And that's what I thought I'd do. So, but when the oil spill happened in the Gulf, that was the catalyst. And I said, I can't stand on the sidelines. I have to. I want to be a little bit more proactive. I want to be grabbing people and pulling them in with me. Just me doing it myself.
Using my Broadway skills. Using my.
I was gonna put on my tap shoes. I was gonna do a triple time step.
I was being for real, but now you're throwing.
No. Yes. Using narrative.
I hope you weren't being for real with the tap shoes.
The tap shoes, and we tried it and it didn't work. No.
You don't love the idea,
I was ready to do anything, and we tried it. It didn't work, and we scrapped that idea. But no. So I basically, I reached out to Tesla. I basically data mined everyone at the company at the time. There weren't that many people in the company at that point. This was 2010. And at this point, Roadster had been out for a couple years. And
full disclosure, I'm not sure if I had heard of Tesla at that point. so this is like, just to be straight up. There's definitely some guys who following, but I don't think they really got on my radar until the Model S was about to launch.
Yeah, it was a little obscure. Stories about Tesla were like the sidebar. It was like a paragraph in like the first pages of Motor Trend. They were like, "Hey, somebody's putting a big battery in a Lotus."
Yeah,
and they're like, and it was literally like there was like this much page real estate.
Yeah,
it was
Tesla clickbait didn't work that well back then.
Yeah, the clickbait wasn't a thing yet. Fortunately, now clickbait we've been eaten by the clickbait monster.
Yeah.
But back then it was like, hey, real journalism, and you had to actually read things and turn a page and you'd see it. You'd see the whole article was there. You didn't have to open it up like a present.
I can't remember. My brain's been too fried. Just kidding. I don't know what you're talking about. My memory from that period is over.
Analog journalism instead of before the digital journalism.
Oh, there's another Model 3 with a dealership license, I think.
Yes.
Seeing a handful of them that were on with the dealer plate, the dealer tags. Just waiting, just bought whatever. So.
Oh yeah.
It's going well.
Yeah.
Going well.
Oh yeah, they're becoming the Toyota Camry of Sarasota. Just ubiquitous. So I love it. Yeah, it rages on. Do you do the I call it the Tesla high five? It's the double blink with the brights as you drive by.
Oh,
that's the thing I do. They usually do it in kind.
I try to wave, but nobody seems to wave back.
Well, because
there's a lot of more mainstream people now who I don't think necessarily think about the fact that they're driving a Tesla. They just there's
like, I need a car. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, this is a great car. Oh, my friend has it. This is a great car, so I got it. It's sort of like just a handful of people at our elementary school with Model X's especially, and a couple Model 3s, and
that's obnoxious, having a Model X and a pickup line.
Oh, this pickup line is like full of Cadillac Escalades and these kind of things, and the Model X looks sort of small actually compared to some of these. But then the Falcon Wing doors come out. A lot of kids are like, they want the kids who open the doors for people. They want to. A lot of them want to get the Tesla. They're like, oh, I want the Tesla. They race for the Tesla.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I had a kid yesterday couldn't figure out how to open the back door for my daughter, and he was a fifth grader, and he was really trying hard, but he couldn't get it, and it was like raining. I was like, I had to get up, but actually it's funny. A lot of them are quite familiar with them now because there's like 6 or 7 Teslas there that go through the pickup line.
Good.
Very cool. It's getting mainstream.
Yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there. That's why we have to do stuff like this, get the content out. But so anyway, long story, a little bit shorter. I basically data mined employees to find out people, which is a really nice way of saying stalking online, to find out people I could have in common with that I could at least kind of break the ice with, and
so you find them at their local coffee shop. You're like, I lived in I don't know, Hoboken or something.
Yeah. Well, I was living in New York City, and in Palo Alto, I wasn't showing up at the doorstep or digging through the trash or anything, but just finding out this commonalities, things that we could connect with, and there's this great guy. Actually, I credit him for changing the course of my life. He's a fantastic guy. His name's Rick Avalos, and he was one of the head recruiters at Tesla at that time. He was brought over by Arnon Gashuru from Google. Arnon was the architect that brought Google from like 2,000 people to 20,000 people in a couple of years. So he was like this Silicon Valley kind of
recruitment like guru kind
yeah,
of. Yeah,
that's exactly right.
I think they were using that word guru a lot back then. That was the phase when guru was very popular.
Oh, guru, yeah,
or
it was
ninja.
like the...
I don't know, ninja was later maybe.
Yeah, ninja, yeah, it was like guru, then ninja, epic, all these words that were like totally overused.
Oh, epic is gone? Oh, shoot.
Epic,
I still use
let's
epic.
bring epic back. Let's bring it back.
I still use it, but I still use stuff from the 90s.
The fanny pack is coming back, so it's no holds barred, you know?
I think epic originally in the 90s, but I mean, from my perspective, and I still use it.
It never died.
No.
Yeah, my love for epic never died. Yeah. So epic. But, he was, he played in Rick played in a jam band in the Bay Area, and he was a huge Monty Python fan. Well, I just got done doing 18 months of Spamalot, the Monty Python the Broadway show, did the tour, and the Los Angeles cast, and so
awesome.
I really knew I lived and breathed Monty Python for about a year and a half of my life.
That's awesome.
And I was raised on Monty Python as well. So
and it has permanent effects on your brain.
It has permanent. Yes, there has been indelible
permanent positive effects.
Yeah. I say knee uncontrollably sometimes, involuntarily.
Sometimes you're having a conversation and people are like, "What is this guy talking about?"
Yeah, I break into a Scottish accent for absolutely no reason. But so I wrote him on Facebook 45 minutes for 40 just a quick thing saying, hey, if I could just have a moment of your time, I'd like to tell you why I think I'd be great to join Tesla. And he replied right back, hey, can we talk? And I was like, great. And then we spoke for about 45 minutes. He's like, this is great. You have to meet Arnon. He is
he's our recruitment guru ninja epic guy.
That's right. He used all the superlatives, yeah. And so I spoke with him the next day for about 45 minutes. We really hit it off, and then he said, well, "Let me fly you out to Palo Alto to meet the team." And
again, this was 2000.
This is 2010.
Right.
And I flew out to Palo Alto, and I met with Doreen. And Arnon was running in and out of meetings, and I met with like 5 other people, and it was before Wave 4 Model S was coming out, about 2 years before, and they said, well, let's keep in touch, and when Model S comes out, we're going to be building all these programs from zero, so let's keep in touch. Sure enough, we did. Rick and I became very good friends over the next 2 years, and then I think it was May of 2012.
While you're looking up, we'll get a look at the sky from this beautiful Tesla Model 3's glass roof. This is his Model 3, of course. Mm-hmm. Your Model 3.
It's my baby.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it like a son. No, it is though. I do truly love it. And they are like, hey, what are you doing right now? And I said, Xanadu. And they said, oh, what's that? And I said, it's a roller disco musical. And they're like, oh, okay. And they're like, hey, well, we're starting a lot of programs with Tesla. We're looking at we're doing the delivery program, and we're looking for kind of unconventional people that aren't necessarily in the auto industry, and people that certainly aren't in delivery, people that necessarily are like delivering refrigerators or something.
So they started off by calling you an unconventional person, yeah, and you thought that was a good thing, right?
It was, yeah, definitely. They wanted people that were good with ambiguity, and problem solvers that were kind of outgoing and believed in the mission. They wanted the true believers at first because you're gonna need it. We're gonna need that.
Well,
faith.
It's funny. You know Tesla 100 times better than I do, but it's you really seem to like. And you do seem to really just embody the Tesla culture. I mean, everything from Monty Python to your fan of the T0 and even gas cars before that. So you have this funny nice mix that's so like Elon's obviously the face and it matches quite well with his kind of history as well.
Yeah, it was very cosmic the way it lined up because it was kind of a destiny scenario where where it lined up. Yeah, a lot of the references that they make in the cars, and even in the announcements, like when the all our patents are belong to you, and the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy references, and the Spy Who Loved Me, James Bond references. Spy Who Loves is like one of my favorite movies of all time. Hitchhiker's Guide, I've read it 1,000 times. I knew the references like that because I think Elon and I are both we're both Gen Xers, and so we're products of our pop culture references that we were raised on are the same.
Yeah.
So these references are all there, and
Spinal Tap.
Yeah, that goes to 11. Yeah, the Spinal Tap reference. I knew that immediately. I was like, that's amazing. It goes to 11.
Have you seen this story? We published it years ago of oh shoot, who's the actress? Okay, the famous actress who's the wife of the actor from Spinal Tap.
Yes, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Jamie Lee Curtis, yes, thank you. She was apparently doing a test drive in Tesla, and they were showing her all the gadgets and stuff, and they're like, oh, and look, you can turn it up to 11. And they're like, this is from a movie. And she's like, oh, really? Is it? And he looks in the back at her husband. And he's like,
oh no! Oh, Christopher Guest was like in the backseat.
Christopher Guest, and then they're like, the Tesla guy doesn't realize who it is. I guess. I mean, it sounds like, but she's like, oh, that's interesting, isn't it, honey? It's like,
and Christopher Guest was probably like, yeah.
It's very cool.
And I love that. I had a surreal moment where I was making a Python reference on Twitter, and then Elon chimed in, and then Eric Idle of Monty Python chimed in.
Oh, yeah.
It was just kind of like, universes colliding.
I remember this, but I vaguely remember this now.
Yeah. And so there's this kind of synergy.
I'm a little later, but it's but all these references again. These are like epic film. Oh, look, there I am. Epic. Yeah. I love this word. I use like epic films that I think a few generations really they were the films.
Classic.
But nowadays it's I guess things change so fast, and you got Netflix, and you got so much more is distributed, decentralized, and so I think it's harder, and it'll always be harder. I think to have these kind of like these things, these references, allusions that just
that are kind of like staple.
Yeah, they're like for these generations,
because content was more spread out back then, so then you would have these kind of pillars of content, like Indiana Jones, Back to the Future, Star Wars, Monty Python, name your thing, where now it's so much content. We'll see how it turns out. Maybe our brains will just maybe with neural lace, we'll just get every reference. We'll just know every reference. It's so funny because all the millennials, when I ended up working at Tesla, these references would come out and they'd be like, all these patents belong to you. God, do I have somebody proofread this? I have a typo in the press release.
Did anybody
I'm like,
notice?
no, it's a video game. No. It's like amazing. Yeah. I was like, it's and then you have to like kind of.
Well, that's something in publishing too. If you ever publish anything that's like not completely straightforward, you get people who get lost, and it's just
like an article that has nothing in it.
Yeah,
I'm playing article. That's funny. That's art. That is poetry.
I know. I wanted to.
That transcends journalism.
I know. People were like, a lot of people. I was surprised at how many people loved it, but I was also really surprised at how many people were referencing. We're referencing the article I wrote about all our something about all the problems with our new Tesla Model 3, and the article was blank, which confused way more people than I realized. I mean, it got a lot more traffic, like hundreds of thousands of views actually. I don't know how many of those are refreshes, but it shocked me how much I just thought it seemed sort of obvious. It just came to mind as like, oh, that'll be a fun little joke.
Yeah.
And a few thousand people will look at it and think, oh, okay. But it got like someone said best Tesla article of the decade. I was like, there's nothing.
What I love, and we talked about that.
I've probably seen people on the Tesla forums do it too. I probably stole it from someone subconsciously.
Hey.
But it blew up. But then you had a lot of people confused by it, and of course some people just get irritated by humor. They're like, that was clickbait. I'm never gonna open CleanTechnica again. It's like, okay, fine. Good for you.
What's the point? Yeah, exactly. We don't want you anymore. No, I thought, and we talked about this a little bit of the other day. I thought it was poetic because all the fudsters, as the fear, uncertainty, and doubt promoters, I could just see them. And what was the article name? What was the article name? It was like three problems with the Tesla or something.
I think it's all our problems, all the problems with our new Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus. I even put Standard Range Plus to make it very
specific. Oh, totally.
To make it very, I was like, should I just keep it simple or make it specific so it seems like there's really something there?
Oh, totally. So like the Fudster, like that to them, that's like a sweet bonbon. They're just the CleanTechnica saying something wrong. They're just like frothing at the mouth. Oh, they can't, and they just they can't wait to click it. They're just frothing. They're drooling. They're so excited. And they're like, do they just want any bad thing morsel they can nibble up? They click on it, and there's nothing there.
Even the Tesla fanboys have gone against Tesla. It's the beginning of the end. It's like, well, I love trolling the trolls, and this is like, I love. I've I said in the past, I even told Elon that I loved that people love when he trolls the trolls, but or said something like that. But then after last year, like I try to not encourage, because like obviously the people, the serious people of the world sort of have difficulty with this sometimes. But
correct,
but I was
they
surprised
don't get
at how many people liked that article and and appreciated it. Someone you pointed out about that, and someone else someone responded just that it was that the point, something like, maybe the point is to stop looking so hard for the problems, or something like that, which was a little bit of a spin on it that I really appreciate, because it's not just trolling the trolls, there's no problems. It's also like people are so obsessive about looking for the problems, and they're like, even fans, it's like, what's wrong with my Tesla? And you look, and I had a writer. He actually brought his Model 3 for me to test drive. First Model 3 I test drove, and I wrote an article about that. Sorry, Elon, Model 3 much better than I expected, which Elon retweeted. But that was like first time he'd retweeted us in a long time. So I was like, now it's been much more frequent, but I was really surprised. Wasn't really trying to clickbait him, but it was an honest apology, because the FUD had gotten into my brain, and I was like, I should apologize for this even affecting me when I should know better. And then also that the Model 3 was much better than our 2015 Model S. But anyway, this guy drove, let me test drive his Model 3 first, and then he went with me to pick up our Model 3. He's a nice reader, writer, friend now, and he was, walking through with me, looking for stuff.
Is it Paul?
Yeah, Paul Foss. Yeah, sorry, I should name him.
I was gonna go out on a limb and say it's probably Paul.
Yeah, no, he's great. He's really friendly.
He's a great guy.
Great evangelist.
Great steward.
Yeah, he's just a really nice guy. Yeah. But he was, helping me walk through and look for stuff, and he was pointing out like, maybe there's a gap here. I would never, pointing out that we would never pay any attention to the panel gaps, or like little tiny differences in panel gaps and little tiny things, and he's like you could look at this, I don't know, and I mean, we didn't find anything on the car, but just this obsession of looking for a problem. And so I really like that comment, that it was not just about having some fun with the trolls or fans. It was also like, people need to chill out a little bit and just don't open that article with the rabies seething, foaming mouth. That's like what will I find here? Yeah. Or like fear, like what is CleanTechnica gonna publish? It doesn't really matter. God, is this gonna affect the stock? Who cares?
And the who cares? And there's a bit of poetry in that most of the FUD articles, and we get more into FUD later if you want.
Yeah, for sure.
But and the FUD and the need for anti-FUD, which I have an anecdote for you happened the other day, and this the importance of anti-FUD. Like somebody got friggin' flipped the other day, which is important,
Okay.
And from most of these articles, and this is why, again, it's another way that article was poetic. The blank article was, most of these things lack content. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
It's this inflammatory, provocative title, and it's devoid of actual content, of actual journalism. It's like terrible.
Yeah, you were pointing it out. Yeah, so the blank article is sort of an artistic reference to like these empty FUD articles, full of words but empty.
Yeah, they don't say anything. Yeah. They have this inflammatory article, and then they might say something that's kind of like hearsay or
Of course,
you know.
all those things ran through my head when I was planning this piece.
Oh, sure, it's just brilliant. You're just like, oh God.
Shakespeare. I'm probably 90% convinced that I've seen people do this kind of thing before, and I just like it just came to mind. It's like, oh, hey, I should do that. But then later I was like, oh, probably I've seen other people do that. It's not the very original. But if you're not on Tesla forums, it's like a lot of stuff can be new that's just like 10 years old.
No, sure. Yeah. It reminds me of that. There's a Broadway play, Art, where it's 3 guys in a room, and this guy just bought a painting, and it's a blank white canvas, and he spent thousands of dollars on it. And the whole show is about them contemplating what is valuable and what is, when you perceive something, we project value onto it.
I love I don't know if it's Banksy's last thing, but the thing where he sold a painting at auction was really valuable, and it went immediately through a shredder, and it just got shredded. it's like, and then it's like people are thinking, okay, is this devalued because it's shredded, or it's increasing, it's valued more because it's Banksy and he did something no one's done, it's shredded piece of, but it's like, I love Banksy. He's great at like making fun of the whole system while becoming a
valuable
huge guy in the system. But
yeah. How do you value things?
But I forget, before we got off
sorry.
Where were you with the
so Tesla the summer of 2012. Sorry, we took a little
2012. Okay.
Yeah, so we're back.
I
2012. And I do have to premise every conversation that I have that brevity is not one of my strengths. So,
look, CleanTechnica wouldn't exist if we were good at brevity.
Yeah, it's it's like just like it's like mining for gold. You have to dig through tons of dirt to find the nuggets of gold. Sometimes I figure, hey, hopefully there'll be some nuggets here that
this is all gold,
interesting,
fully gold.
Yeah, it's solid gold. It's Donald Trump's bathroom.
This is solid gold wooden horse.
I love it. Yeah, it's solid gold. Yeah, wooden rabbit. Yeah,
fully 100% solid gold wooden rabbit.
Gold plated. So basically, and then Brandon Wadley, who is a colleague of Rick's, was heading up the delivery recruiting program, and he's like, hey, you're going to have a series of interviews, this time through Skype, because when I flew out to Palo Alto, Rick was like, they don't fly anybody out. That was like, this is like really cool. And so this time in 2012, they're just doing anything but Skype, and I just did it from my place in New York. And I met with Doreen Allen, who's the head of North American sales at the time. At least she's heading up Lucid sales now, which is pretty cool. And then
we were talking about how a lot of early people are still there. A lot of early people are like top people at other EV startups or EV programs at major automakers. Yeah. Or Mazda in Texas, I think it was.
One of my buddies is over there. Yeah, which is good. He's probably doing. What's so crazy is when they go over to the skills that Tesla taught them. As again, with another tangent, I'll talk to some of these other companies. They're like blown away at the level that the Tesla people operate at. Yeah. Because I think they're just used to operating at like that fire alarm. Yeah. Urgency
instead of an insulated corporate safe case.
Punch out.
It's a true startup.
There's a sense of urgency. Yeah. You really felt that there like a revolution is being waged.
Is it from the startup just challenges as well as the mission, or is it like a mixture of these two things?
It was having very little resources. It was basically particularly in the early days, it was the ability of the individual to produce something, anything. Like I love the first and it's online somewhere, I'm sure. The first breakdown of the roles at Tesla. It used to be really hardcore. I really loved it. And it would say, we are looking for builders. you have to be a builder. You have to take something from nothing. It's like if you're looking for a 9 to 5 job where you just punch in and punch out.
This wasn't the prologue to Minecraft, was it? No.
No.
They didn't just plagiarize Minecraft.
But it is that idea. It is that idea, you know, of like create a world, build the world that you want, you know. And it was that kind of idea of like they said like if you're looking for a 9 to 5 job, they said this almost verbatim. If you're looking for a 9 to 5 job, you will find what we're doing here to be too difficult, and which is true because my first year I worked about 100 hours a week. Every week.
Well, it's funny when you meet people at startups who left Tesla to have a more relaxed life. And I mean, a startup of any kind is not really what you think of it as a relaxed life job. Like, it's not a government job. It's not a big corporate job. So it's like, it seems like when you talk to some of these people, there's Tesla, there's startup life, there's normal corporate life, there's you know, and it's just in a whole nother level of startup culture and frenetic.
It's like a calling / obsession because I've always said I've never wanted to have a job. I wanted to follow a calling, and that's kind of everything I do. That's what I want to do, and of course there's all sorts of jobs and people need to do them. But if they can find the meaning behind it, then that's it. In Tesla, it's just quite obvious. It was the meaning, the urgency, that what needs to be done was so evident in everything we did, and it was scraping for life every
day. The
day.
mission was quite embedded in the work back then, or it was something sort of you knew, but it was like in the back burner, or it was something that sort of got revived, like we have to do this to save the world. Like
correct. Yeah, it was very potent back then, and one of my things I tried to do with Tesla as time goes on is instill that sense of urgency. My parting letter to the colleagues, I had like an open letter that was more public, but one to colleagues is said in 2012, and I won't talk about the content of it, but Elon wrote an email, and he coined a term, ultra hardcore. He's like, we're gonna have to be ultra hardcore. And what that was this. It was kind of it was a dedication that goes far beyond the ordinary. Mm-hmm. And it was the email was basically an apology to friends and family of the employees, saying you will not see these people for a while.
Please forward this to your wife.
yeah. Tell them you won't see them for a while. And but the ultra hardcore mentality was this thing of saying like every cell of your body has to go into it, or else it's going to fail, and that had to be really instilled. And so my parting request to my colleagues when I ended up parting with Tesla was that we've come so far, more than 10 times bigger than when I started, way more bigger, and but we can't become complacent. They can't become complacent. They have to the ultra hardcore mentality can't be an archaic notion from a bygone era. Like, oh, it used to be like, they gotta keep it like that. Mm-hmm. And I think they do just by default. It's like you can't not be in that mode.
But you also have this kind of challenge of, it originally, of course, it was ultra hardcore employees, buyers for a while. And now this is the challenge of being mainstream. When you hit mainstream, you're not going to only be selling to the ultra hardcore. Correct. You're selling to people who just want the best new car, nice tech,
Correct.
So you see a lot of people who are not like in the Tesla community, whatever, but it's
Correct.
But that's obviously the goal, and that's obviously you have to bring them in. I like that you're sort of saying, at least on the employee end, you bring them in for all the reasons they come in, but also like you try to bring them into the culture, bring them into the
Correct.
mission and the essence of Tesla.
And there's two elements of ultra hardcore. There's the not fun part, which is like really hard work, like really hard work, like you're crying and bleeding hard work.
You shouldn't smile while you say this.
Yeah, exactly.
You should be crying. Oh, yeah. You can get crazy. I put crazy out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. But
give an awkward wink. Like, really hard.
Like crying. Yeah. Like pain.
Now I'm gonna like try to pull out your acting skills every time I think of it. It's let's see
and my highly articulated eyebrows.
Let's see what we can do with this video series.
Yeah.
So if you're listening on the podcast, you have to watch the videos.
No, I look great. So I look like death. But the well, ultra hardcore, yeah, like you said, we're going from a startup to mainstream. From a customer standpoint, there's this early adopter, ultra hardcore, but later on, ultra hardcore, inherently, what that means is, oh, you have to work hard. And who likes to work hard? I mean, this is capitalism, this is America. No one wants to work for anything. It's like, no, I want it to be easy, I want it to be convenient. So
don't we have like a Tesla drive-through where you can just, give people a Tesla through a drive-through window?
I'm sure that's kind of what the delivery process they wanted it to be, but as it should be. But also it's the why. It's the why you do it, and that was a huge part of Tesla in the early days, and I hope in the onboarding it still is, because the why is what drives people. It's what makes good work great. And that's what, even when I worked at the mall location at Tesla, I always like to instill, particularly the new employees, I always say, you are not a mall employee. You work at Tesla, which happens to be in the mall. And it's all just a huge plan to maximize foot traffic. That's why we are here. Yeah. We're not selling sweaters at the Gap. Yeah. We are changing the world. We are changing the world every day with every single person that comes in here. If they don't know about Tesla, their entire world is going to be flipped upside down by the time they walk out. We are basically introducing them to a world that might not be aware exists, and because
we are different. Now go get your Starbucks and come back.
Yeah, sure. Get comfortable. Well, no, but that's it.
No, that's really important.
You want to catch them in that mindset, that consumer mindset, because you want them to have their mind open to adopting something, to bring something home with them, even if it's an ideological thing. And I actually wrote an essay on it. I'll send it to you. It was called Applying Superlative Approach to the Tesla website, which is the superlative approach we used in the stores to the Tesla website. And then I was actually advising for the redesign of the website, which turned out great, I thought. For a while it was
I don't even remember what it was. I mean,
well, yeah, that's a...
Yeah, but it's a great... I mean...
It's great now.
I mean, Tesla's wonderful with everything design. I mean, it seems like... Mm-hmm. And I'm sure it's a team of people. Elon's very, focused on simplification, minimalism, which is critical in good design, I think. So it comes across in all kinds of products, whether it's like the touchscreen interface, the cars, the website, it's the app, it's good.
Yeah.
Anyway, but this is we could have probably a full episode on the superlative. What did you call that?
The superlative approach, applying superlative approach. And we could talk about that. So I started back in 2012. I started with the delivery team, and I flew out and I stayed in Palo Alto for about 2 months. Spent bouncing between Palo Alto, the headquarters, and Deer Creek, and then Fremont, the factory. And it was crazy. The factory was like, they were using like 1/10 of it back then. Yeah. It is weird.
Yeah. I remember when it was like, oh, we have this huge space and we're using like this tiny corner.
It was a sliver. It's hilarious. We used to eat lunch, and it was literally this part of the factory. Bigger drink than I intended. The part of the factory was like the size of like 2 gymnasiums. It was like massive, and it was bare. There was nothing in it. It was like this like post-apocalyptic,
builders. You need builders.
Yeah, we need to build it. We need builders in here. But it was like this huge space, and we would just sit on old equipment from like Toyota, like the stuff that they left, and it was kind of like these yellow robot thing, and we just sit on them and eat lunch, and then it was just, I mean, you could throw a football. You could play like a regulation game of football, like it's 100 yards of nothing.
This is where that builder pitch came from, right? Elon, JB, and I don't know if Jerome was there back then. In the factory, was like, we need some stuff. We need builders who will build stuff and put it in here.
Yeah, well, that was
so that we can build other stuff.
Well, that was the thing. You saw like it was untapped potential, which we knew. It's like, well, they'll use this eventually. What was really crazy, I went back a year later with my in-laws. We were actually got a vacation. It was incredible, and it was that space that it was like 200 yards of nothing was now row after row of like thousands of aluminum doors for cars. Like I was like, oh, that's how they use this space.
That's like my favorite thing that we toured the factory a few months ago, and there's a lot of really impressive stuff. But I love seeing those stacks, those shelves and shelves of aluminum doors, and that for me was the most effective way to try to visualize the scale of it. Just thinking that's a car. That's these are doors for how many cars, and it's just it's really striking and impressive. And I spanned with Kanan spanned with the camera too, but you see, still is like there's so many of them. You can't capture.
It's hard to
it.
capture the scale.
Of course, you can't really put any of this in your brain. Like you can try, but you can't really think in these scales. But yeah, it's really a cool view. Yeah,
that's why I highly recommend if anyone's a Tesla owner to tour the factory. It's like I call it Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. It's a magical place. You go there, and I don't know if Elon's Willy Wonka in that analogy or something, but and my buddy Brenda, she does the tours. Brenda Vivian, I think she's still doing it. She's so awesome, and it's just really fun to do.
It's a really cool process, after we toured it, the first impression that came out for me was the atmosphere inside of Tesla is much different than the public messaging around Tesla, the media coverage of Tesla.
Yeah, I think they think the factory. If you read about the factory in a lot of journalists,
you think it's
like
the
cracking whips. Yeah. It's like it's like the beginning of Les Mis.
People unwilling to make eye contact.
Exactly.
But actually, it's like so many smiling people, so many people like really you could see they have the mission in them. They have the. It just struck me like that was the first thing it was from the offices and the factory, but that was the first takeaway, and I wrote this article about it. And then it was funny because Ross Gerber, who's a vocal investor in Tesla, Gerber Kawasaki, he tweeted like while I was drafting this article something like very similar, and I was like, that's weird. It sounds like he was just in the factory too. And it turned out he had toured the factory like a day or two before or after us. I think a day before or after us. So I ended up putting it in the article as tweet. But it was just funny that was the impression. That was basically the take-home impression first that struck us both. It was like when you go inside, you have a much different, more positive, more optimistic atmosphere than even us Tesla bulls on the outside get while following Tesla. So
it implies that it's a universal takeaway, which is great. When that's the thing, I think even like the staunch critics, when I've heard anecdotally, they go in there and they leave. They're like, this company's going to take over the world. It's like,
and that's
blown away.
And that's sort of like the second. I mean, that's the other main impression. It's like, whoa, Tesla's. This is
the real deal.
This is amazing,
Yeah, and that was the idea when they first got Fremont. Elon wanted to show like we're a real car company. This is a huge. This is 5 million square feet. This is big.
I think that's the phrase when they bring like CBS or someone through, and they're like, oh, it's not just a Silicon Valley software company that's like pulling strings. Like this is a real manufacturing company, a real car company, and I think that really is needed for people to see and also see that they have a lot of innovations. You mentioned something we'll get to in a future. I think we wrap up this one, but a future episode is about Jerome Guillen, the president of Automotive Now, requiring like 2 improvements a week or something, 2 incremental improvements a week on the production.
Elon did. Yeah, it was a couple. They wanted to note a handful of incremental improvements from manufacturing, and what's really cool at Fremont. You probably saw it when you were there. And one of the things that hit me when I first arrived for training was training. By the way, was great. If you want to, maybe we can wrap it with the very beginning of the journey with Tesla.
Cool.
So
you can leave a cliffhanger on the training.
Well, yeah, it was really cool. The day one, we show up at Fremont.
And maybe I'll just real quickly note. So this will be in the article, but for people just watching or listening, David just left a few months ago, not for bad reasons, for good reasons.
I was actually poached by a Tesla owner.
Poached by a Tesla. What is a P100D owner who's got something going?
P90D.
P90D.
Yeah, medical tech. Yeah.
But yeah, he's so it's so we're looking to kind of communicate a long-term story from inside of Tesla, from the days we just talked about to more recently. And sort of, I think, fully let you go where you go. I think this is perfect. I love the
the free
side.
There's a lot of cool anecdotal things, which I think I think they're good. Again, not giving away trade secrets or anything like that.
But what is the actual chemistry of the battery?
So the 2170. Let me tell you something about it. No,
shit! We just got shot in the head. Oh no! It's on camera at least. Good views.
Elon's like, got him. The first day was awesome, and talking about mission and serving like the Kool-Aid for it. They had us all line up, and they had a Roadster, the original Tesla Roadster, and one of the guys from HR was driving it. And we'd line up, and it was like a carnival ride. We'd get in, and we'd do a hot lap around the test track, and it was the first time everyone got a chance, to really to get in the Roadster and really feel it, really drive in a spirited manner, and it was like the ultimate Kool-Aid. Like we all got out of that car and we were like, we will do anything for you.
Well, that's the funny thing. The Kool-Aid is real human experiences. That's it's like
have people experience it.
Yeah.
Even the most. God, I can't tell you how many people. And this is for another episode. But it is the experiential knowledge. Yeah. You can talk till you're blue in the face, getting people in the car. I have taken the most bitter, staunch critic of Tesla and flipped them, because once you experience it, it is undeniable.
Yeah. And there's so much fun out there. Like I said, I was even surprised when I drove the Model 3, like how nice the car was, how nice the seats were, the doors. I love the doors I love the opening and closing. Just much different feel than an older Tesla too, which I think a lot of people just really don't realize is these 2 incremental improvements a week add up to a lot of change over a few years. And the cars are just tremendous vehicles now. But I think this is actually, in a sense, a plus potentially in this FUD, this kind of misinformation campaign that's been running for years. To me, there's a lot of people out there that have superficial negative views of Tesla, and as soon as they experience one and like learn a little bit like from real world, they flip. And not only do they like, oh, this is cool, it's like because they had that superficial negative, it's like the flip is stronger, I think. So the demand, I think that really makes people realize, hey, I was fooled, maybe I should really think seriously about a Tesla or whatever. So I think that process is like just starting. Like now that you have a certain number of Model 3s on the road, I think there's still this widespread calculation that people think a Tesla costs as much as a Porsche or Ferrari. So they think even a Model 3, they're like, oh, that's a fancy, and you can now start explaining, well, if you drive this much and you have this price of electricity or gas, it could be a comparable to a Camry or a Accord or something. And then people like have this mental like, whoa, what, the mind pops.
Makes it accessible.
But then driving, I mean, this is the
that seals it. One of the great, and this for another episode, I have to show you this exchange I had on LinkedIn. I was posting about my, I just did a 20
a recent one that you were mentioning at the beginning, like a recent flip, or is this different?
Yeah, that was the same guy, and I'll show you. We don't have time today, but I'll show you the thread. It was this guy. He was in IT, so it's not like he works in a cave or something, and I had to completely flip around. I used some of your content. I could show you. I was like, check out this article. Check out this article. Because basically, I had to like systematically take these misconceptions that he viewed as fact. He'd be like, oh, well, everyone knows it's, the battery only lasts 5 years and that dies. I'm like, no, actually, it actually.
Did you use my blank article too?
I was like, yeah, look. I was like, look really close. It might take a while to load. So really wait. No, I didn't.
No,
do that.
but I mean,
might deserve it.
this was not like this is not our goal. This is not strategic. We still don't chase views. I would say, in my opinion. But I think we've built ourselves quite a bit on just trying to put more context and perspective around things, because we're sort of, I'm sort of one of these people who I can't stand seeing injustice and lies and that kind of stuff. It just drives me crazy. So, you see, I think we really got big initially with Tesla when Broder, the New York Times reporter, had driven a Model S and sort of, it seemed intentionally ran out the battery, and Tesla responded, very Tesla way, like, no, we have a black box, shows that you did the circle in this parking lot for like 10 times.
The cars are telematically connected. Yeah. Like, we know how these cars are.
So we responded several times to that, and that sort of got us going. But I mean, in the Tesla field, yeah. Anyway, but sort of year after year, this doesn't stop, and we've done this with solar, and we have to do this with solar, and there's just this position in the media where it's needed. So we try to do what's needed, and people appreciate and value. We had the epic thing. Oh, there it is again. Epic. The story last year of this Andrew Left of Citron Research or whatever, who I guess was a vocal short seller, Tesla short seller for years. I don't really follow the stock that much actually, but I guess he was one of the most vocal short sellers for years. And he flipped last year right before the third quarter report, right before Tesla published a letter about third quarter earnings, and he wrote it. And I saw my sales charts popping up on CNBC. I was like, why is CNBC using my charts? And then someone, Matt Pressman from EV Annex, sent me his letter his letter explaining why he flipped from being short to long, and it had 4, I think, of my Tesla sales charts in there, and the letter read like a CleanTechnica article, like a long CleanTechnica article, and you're like, and it's sort of, it just made us feel like, okay, we're filling a gap here, explaining the context that people don't necessarily see right off the bat, and oftentimes just bringing it from other people. I mean, we're just trying to bring it to a bigger audience. There's a lot of Tesla people, very smart people, who figure these things out better than us, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's a really good point. Let's explain it.
There's the bubble element. We have the people where we do a lot of preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
Where I mean, as owner within the Tesla community, but if you have a venue, like CleanTechnica, and we can do a whole other episode of FUD and the need for anti-FUD.
That would be a great single up. Yeah,
it's
especially you are very much face to face with that, every day at Tesla, right?
Oh yeah. With the the uninitiated or person, like, my kid won't stop talking about this. So I've been driving a Mercedes for 40 years. Never.
This is. I mean, we should just spend one on kids too, because this is something that I've talked to people at the store trying to understand, like, who comes in there and stuff, and they've mentioned, young people is a big part of people coming in, and people showing their parents the car and that stuff.
Yeah.
And this is like a big thing, and the thing that blows my mind is, you see, like, my daughter's in kindergarten, and there's like all these little kids in elementary school who know Tesla and love Tesla. And it's just like, how did they get into Tesla? Like, this is like, they can't even drive a Tesla for like 15 years, like, or 10 years or some 10 years. So it's like, how is this like a thing with kids?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's really fascinating. I really want to dive into this topic. We have a writer who got into it at 16 from Netherlands, Kanan. He's our media guy. And I'm like, well, so how did you get into it? It's like, I don't know. It was just,
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like,
well, I love how it's becoming part of the cultural lexicon.
Yes.
Finally. Like, I was taking a tour of my daughter's elementary school, McNeil Elementary. It's really, really great. And I was wearing my Tesla shirt, and I actually put my name tag over the logo, because I don't want to be like that Tesla guy. I wanted to be there as a dad, not as like, oh, I'm a Tesla guy. Yeah. So. But what was really amazing was the principal was giving the tour to us, and there's all these quotes from historically significant people. Mm-hmm. So you had like Mahatma Gandhi, Isaac Newton, Martin Luther King, JFK, Einstein.
And then you had all our patents are belong to you.
No, but I'm saying no. But then you had Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Like he was up there with like George Washington and Mahatma Gandhi. You know, like these like major historical figures. Like so, kids like we grew up studying MLK and Einstein. Kids are going to be growing. They're going to be learning about Elon Musk. As a historical figure, he's a living historical figure.
This is something
incredible.
This is something I think a couple years ago that was sort of catching on, becoming well known and understood. That I mean, the guy is already a huge historical figure. I mean, it's what he's done with SpaceX. I mean, just even right off PayPal. What was his arcade company they started with? Brothers a Kid. Right off these things. But SpaceX, Tesla, he's already like
Zip2,
a tremendous like historical figure. I mean, I remember people back a couple years ago. He's potentially already the most monumental figure in business of the century and whatnot. And he was starting to get a lot of credit for this. I think he was starting to get really widespread mainstream, like this guy is our historical figure in business, like our Einstein or Edison or whatever.
I call him the Da Vinci of our time.
And then I mean, just it's mind blowing how much it's not just one industry; it's multiple industries. But then that sort of shows you how effective the smear campaigns have been, because they really just killed that narrative, and they've turned the narrative around Elon Musk into a totally different narrative. That's just really warped and like crazy, and it's just really nasty. And it's
people calling him like a con man and stuff. It's like what? It's like I love the popular. I think it was Popular Mechanics that did they took a bunch of like industry leaders talking about Elon, and I loved.
I remember.
I loved. It was so great. They're like, this guy's landing rockets. Like, what are you doing?
These really notable people are like, this guy's amazing, and you're like, oh. You can see like some people, like I won't name names, but some people in the media or Wall Street or whatever, you could just see them stepping back and be like, oh, really? So he's doing stuff that's like
changing the fabric of humankind. Like, I guess I didn't realize that. But was so cool, like when I was getting the tour, this is my daughter's elementary school. It's a public school. And the principal, unprompted, she did not see my Tesla logo, and she goes, has anyone been in a Tesla? Because she was talking about preparing the kids for the jobs of tomorrow. So she started talking about AI, and she started talking about renewable energy. She goes, have anyone been in a Tesla? And a couple of people raised it. It was like 8 people, like me and my wife obviously did, my wife and I, and like another person. And she goes, ride in one, it will change your life. She goes, I have a Tesla, I love it. And stuff, and then she actually recognizes me. She goes, I think you sold it to me. And I was like, I did. She's like, hey, it's great, I love it, it's so great. And she goes on this whole thing about like how they want to instill these values of using technology to leverage to make humankind move in the right direction. And it's so amazing that like that's should be the conversation.
Yes, exactly.
So
I mean, you also just see how when people are so effective at shifting the conversation, they can then throw like what's rational and sensible and makes sense in historical perspective into like this extremist fanboy like bucket, and then it's like but then the wonderful thing, people will experience Teslas. And they will see, some of the funniest comments are when people are like, he's never produced anything, he's never done anything, and no results. I've seen this.
It's so
like,
crazy.
I'm like,
it's
results. Like, what planet are you on? Like, are you on Mars?
Yeah,
you're waiting.
It's the fastest growing company in the history of any company that's produced a complex product.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean,
there's like
that's something.
I mean, it's there's like no results. No,
it's like
just can't execute. And this is one that's not just obscure. This is one that's like quite common. This idea that he's bad at executing and he's not a good business manager or whatever. And this is one for sure I think is pushed by certain Wall Street interests and certain industry interests. And it gets picked up and spoken about and communicated in a very realistic way. Like, yes, if only he wasn't a bad businessman, Tesla would do so much better. It's like, Tesla would be dead like 100 times. Like
Yes.
this guy is an
He has
amazing business manager.
as his ex-wife said famously, in an interview, he has brass balls of steel. He has balls of steel.
Yeah.
Like he can look into the abyss and just do it. And
I think it's about that long-term vision too, which we'll come back to.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you could say a lot about how you saw that early on, and I mean, well, I was going to ask early in the interview. Do you
origin thing?
No, this is good. Did you? I'm really curious when you came to the company, and you're saying like in the factory, sitting in the sort of almost empty factory. Did you feel like, okay, this is definitely going to happen, or were you sort of like, okay, there's a 10% chance of this, but let's try?
Elon often says, there was like the problem. You just assumed it was going to fail because all the cards were stacked against, but you still have to try. And here's the thing: I don't know if I'm just a cockeyed optimist or whatever, or if I saw the long-term vision, but in my heart of hearts, I knew it was going to be big. I knew it was going to work. I really did. I was like, this, because when I first experienced Model S, they were touring it around, like the beta version. It was what would be the production version, and it was at the Manhattan Car Club in Manhattan, this like high-end car place that put cars on display, and I went and this is the first time I experienced Model S, and that was an epiphany. Yeah. I was like. Yeah. It was obviously going to change everything in my mind. It was just about getting it out there, and then so for me, don't get me wrong. There are days in the delivery days when I went back to New York. We did not know when we left that morning. We didn't know if there'd be a job next day. Mm-hmm. We didn't. It was we were so in the weeds, and it was such a like shoestring situation. But again, I guess maybe because I'm a cockeyed optimist, I was like, we're going to see this through. And there were such dark days.
And do you think that was sort of, maybe not sort of the norm, sort of the people who were in Tesla in that age, in that day, in that age, you're in a whole different age now. In that period of time, were like that. They were like, okay, it's difficult, but we believe this is really going to.
Correct. It was basically no matter. I think that, and what I want to, I hope is instilled in people now, because like with these articles would come out, like FUD would come out, and a lot of Tesla employees would get really down, and rightly so, because this is not positive stuff. But they'd be like, oh man, things were bad, and I was like, no, they're not. No, they're not, because back in the day, I think what it was, if the mindset was. No matter how dismal and how bad and how stacked the cards were against us, how impossible the probability of success was, we were going to try until we were not given the opportunity to try anymore. Yeah. Until we were dead, until it was dead. And it was that kind of perseverance, like to the 11th hour, we were going to do it. And that's what really did it. It's that most people quit right on the edge of success, right. And that's an analogy for everyone. Yeah. But it's that extra push that does it. And I think in those dark days, I mean, and again, maybe we could say it for another thing. There were times where just silly things would happen, and we would things where people would be like, "Well, all done. Everyone go home." Yeah. We're done. Yeah. Finished. Maybe where the mentality was like. No, what can we do it was like basically like pulling out the pads, like, like get this thing back, get this company back to life. Yeah. Let's do it. And it came back to life every time. Yeah. And just from grit, like sheer determination and grit. And there are so many stories, I think some of them I could share, that where when you put it in perspective like that, it's like,
yeah. Well, we had one where I was again trolling the trolls. I was, I wrote this article, eight impossible. This actually started. Well, I'm not gonna say how it started, but eight impossible goals that Tesla achieved or something. I wrote last year, and it was sort of making fun. All these experts said this is impossible, this is impossible. But when when I think about that in the perspective of you talking, it's like I'm a little.
Well, back then it was impossible.
I'm a little smart aleck, commentator, but just making fun that people thought it was impossible. But the challenges were so dramatic, and you really did such amazing things that it's really impressive and mind blowing. It's not just funny that people got it wrong. It's just a really tremendous success.
The thing was this. They had a point.
Yes.
because based upon what the regular person would deem an acceptable workload, no one wanted to do that. That's too much work. That's an impossible amount of work. And what George Blankenship would keep saying, and he said this when Model S, his speech when Model S won the Motor Trend Car of the Year award, which I was at that event in Manhattan. He's like, people at Tesla, we're doing the impossible. We do the impossible every single day, and it was that ultra hardcore mentality, because for most people they're like, oh man, but I've been working for 14 hours and I haven't slept in a week. Like, oh man, it's not gonna work. And it was like, no, that's what needs to be done. Yeah. And like when these, like with Fudsters, and again, say this for another, like a tweet that I usually, and I have it copy and pasted in my notes on my phone. My universal response to short sellers is Tesla's determination to change the world is far greater than your desire to win a bet. Yeah. I guarantee it.
Yeah,
I guarantee it. And I say, I usually say, let go of the cynicism that fuels your greed, because it's not gonna lead to anywhere good.
That's great. I can see how you got your job. You're very good with words. You're very good explaining this stuff and really getting to the core point.
Yeah. When you live and breathe it every day, you just yeah.
But that article, it started with a bit of a joke about. I was sort of joking that hey, I hear it's impossible to build a vehicle with falcon wing doors. Is that true? It's like and this is like long after the Model X is mass produced, but this was a big thing. This was like it's completely impossible. This idea is going to break Tesla, because you just cannot build a vehicle with falcon wing doors, mass produce it. It's just not going to work. Mm-hmm. Industry experts, various ones, I'm not going to name names, but said this, and then Tesla did it.
Yeah.
And then no one ever brought that up again, really. It's like, okay, you bring it up as a mistake that they made, that it was a very difficult thing they did. But there were so many cases of that, and I don't really, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't really see that many cases like that right now, where it's like Elon said, he's trying to avoid do or die, like company make or break company challenges. But so it feels like a different era where it's like,
well, I think they've learned a lot.
You've learned a lot, and there's just a kind of mass awareness that's growing organically. That's, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, from a manufacturing, they had a point. I mean, as Elon famously said, Model X was the Fabergé egg of cars. Yeah. They basically built a car that was like the hardest to build in the world, and then they said, let's make the 3 and subsequently the Y the antithesis of that. Like, let's make it super easy to build. And so they learn these lessons. They're hard lessons to learn. I remember Neil Joseph. He started the delivery program for Tesla. He was my first boss by him and Seneca Gisi, and he said, it's a double-edged sword. One is there's no rule book. And 2 is there's no rule book. He's like, so we can make it anything we want, and that's good. We're not bound by the bureaucracies of an antiquated system. But he said, that being said, no one's ever done it. So he's like, we just have to assess, adapt, and overcome. We figure out something, like what works, what doesn't work. That comes up, that becomes a theme all through Tesla. The Toronto delivery event, that's a whole episode in itself, where
I'm glad we've got notes on like several other episodes. I was like, I hope this doesn't just end up like 7 episodes. It would be great.
This one I know is supposed to be like an intro origin story, and it became this like hodgepodge. I'm sorry, because
for me, the whole conversation was fascinating. So I assume there will be other people who thinks the same, and if there are people who don't, like, okay, find someone else. Go to CNBC or whatever. But thank you so much. We will come back. We will have more to talk about for sure. Obviously. Let you go. intro. We will let listeners and watchers wait for a few. You can also, if people are watching, listening, you can send extra questions, and I'm sure a lot of people have questions from your intro. And I think, where did we stop here? 2012 or?
Yeah, gosh, man, we spent all this time, and we got like 2 months in.
The goal was to just start in 2012, but
okay, yeah.
I didn't realize there was so much before 2012.
That's
actually.
like, oh well, yeah, and as I could just go, I can ramble on and on. I hope it's remotely interesting, but
dude, people are gonna love your perspective. I mean, you lived inside Tesla for 7 years. I mean, we're inside a Tesla, but but I think there's a real craving, and that's what I try to say with the factory, and I think you understand, is there's a real craving to understand what it's really like inside Tesla, and not just this outside superficial view that we get in these little sort of leaks here and there about specific things. So I think people will. This is why I thought this would be an amazing series, because I think people really like to see, like, oh, what is it like?
I've always said that if a camera crew was allowed to follow Tesla employees around, it would be the highest rated reality show in history. Because the cast of characters and the situations they get in are so fascinating. And so, like, it's like, how are they gonna get out of this one, and then they do it, and it's like cliffhanger after cliffhanger, and it's really a story about, and Elon has talked about this, it's a story about perseverance, ingenuity, teamwork, focus, and overcoming insurmountable odds. It's like the great American story, and it needs to be told. It's so fascinating, and you're right, it's not being told, and the
mission and the underlying mission, and well, we had one of my favorite articles we've ever published with guy Steve Backer. He wrote an article about the hero story, like the historic. Go back in humanity as far as you can. There's always a story of a hero and heroic story, narrative.
Yeah, and everyone's think they're foolish for trying to do it.
But it's like, against all odds. It's sort of, a bumbling kind of...
the steamboat,
not
the horseless carriage. It'll never work.
It could be the Indiana Jones, could be the Luke Skywalker, whatever. But he really...
like fictional,
he really explained... like
the archetype of a hero.
The archetype of a hero. But then linked it to Elon a few years ago, and how he fits that archetype so superbly that we see in story after story. So it's just a really, and then all the allusions to these kind of stories is great, because it just sort of connects those dots, I think. But I think really getting the inside view of how the company sort of transformed, and I think this is hugely valuable for me. So I think it's got to be for many people. So thank you so much for saying hello to me one day, and then talking so nice, and thank you for the Broadway background. Thank you for your your car history. Thank you for for really prepping yourself for this interview. You did a lot of good prep work.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Oh my God, that was the rantings of a madman.
You did like, I don't know how old you.
That made a certain president sound coherent.
You did like 30
comparison.
No, you did like 30 years of prep work for this interview. So I have to appreciate it.
It was just so polished. Just had a through line.
I don't know how you knew.